I was in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my only daughter, Angela. Her voice sounded strange, almost cold, as she stated, "Mom, we're going to Europe tomorrow. I've already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." And she hung up just like that. 45 years raising her, making sacrifices for her, and she discarded me like I was nothing. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my dear daughter didn't know. My name is Antonia Brooks. I'm 71 years old, and until that moment, I believed I knew my daughter. I had become a widow 6 months ago. My husband, Robert, passed away from a heart attack while we were eating breakfast, just as we had done every morning for 45 years. That morning, he had served me coffee with cream and toast. As always, he had kissed my forehead and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were his final words to me. Since then, Angela had been more present in my life, or so I thought. She visited 3 times a week. She assisted me with the funeral arrangements and accompanied me to the grocery store. She even suggested I see a doctor for a general checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say with a smile I once interpreted as love, but now understood was merely convenient. The beach house had been our sanctuary for years. Robert and I bought it when Angela was 15 through significant hard work and sacrifice. Every summer we would go there, building memories, celebrating birthdays and Christmases. Angela would bring her boyfriends, and later her husband, Edward. I would cook for everyone, clean, and do the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never imagined she would see it as just an asset. And the car, that old Ford pickup truck, Robert maintained like his own child. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil religiously, and always parked it in the same spot under the shade of the tree. Angela knew what that truck meant to me. It was the last tangible connection I had to him. His scent still lingered on the seats. After she hung up, I remained seated on that uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by other patients. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something unusual happened inside me, a calm I hadn't felt since Robert's death settled over me. Because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Robert had handed me a manila envelope. "Antonia, put this in your dresser drawer. If something happens to me, open it after a while, but only when you feel ready." I had put it away without much thought. After the funeral, consumed by grief and arrangements, I simply forgot, but there it was, waiting for me at home. The nurse called me into the office. The doctor examined me and said I was in good health for my age, that I just needed more rest and a better diet. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the coldness in Angela's voice, and how Edward was likely behind it all. He had never liked me. He always saw me as a burden. I left the office and walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Angela, but as I waited, I couldn't help but smile. There was something poetic about it all. My daughter thought she had left me with nothing, but what she didn't know was that Robert, my dear Robert, had always been a man who planned ahead. The bus arrived, and I sat by the window. I watched the city go by, the houses, the stores, people rushing everywhere, all with their own tragedies and secrets. I had my own too, and I was about to discover them. When I got home, I went straight to my room. I opened the dresser drawer, and there was the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel there were several documents inside. Robert had written my name on the front in his neat handwriting. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. It was starting to get dark outside, and the house was filling with those familiar shadows that no longer frightened me. I opened the envelope slowly, as if unwrapping a precious gift. What I found inside would change everything. The contents took my breath away. There were legal documents, deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Robert. My eyes filled with tears as I read his familiar script. My dear Antonia, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from worry. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just have the beach house. We have 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward live. We also have shares in 3 companies that are worth more than you can imagine. You are rich, my love. You always were, but now you are on paper, too. My hands shook as I looked through the documents. There were deeds to houses in different city neighborhoods, a downtown condo, a small motel on the coast, and indeed, the 20-story apartment building where my daughter lived. Robert had been the silent owner for the past decade, but had placed everything under a company name I didn't recognize. And according to the papers, I was the sole heir to that company. There were also bank statements for accounts I never knew existed, with balances that seemed unreal. Robert had been a bus driver for 40 years, but apparently he had also been a very shrewd investor. Every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied in silence, and I never knew a thing. In the letter, Robert explained he had kept it all a secret because he didn't want me to worry about money, or for Angela to know our true financial situation. You know our daughter, Antonia. If she knew we had so much, her attitude would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we have. The irony was profound. Our daughter had discarded us thinking we had nothing, when in reality we had everything. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house, touching the old furniture and the knickknacks Angela had always criticized for being outdated. I looked at the family photos on the wall, especially the one where she was 5 years old, sitting on Robert's lap and laughing. Where had that sweet little girl gone? When had she become so cold and calculating? The next day, early in the morning, the phone rang. It was Angela again. Her voice sounded different, softer, but I had already learned to be wary of those shifts in tone. "Mom, how are you? I wanted to tell you we transferred the money from the house and the car. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller." "My share?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Yes, Mom. We obviously weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the money for our investment in Europe. Edward has an incredible business opportunity over there. 30% of my own possessions. How generous, I see. And when do you leave?" "This afternoon. Our bags are already packed. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe more if the business goes well. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something that fits your needs, fits my needs," as if she knew what my needs were. "Okay, Angela, have a safe trip." "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much." And she hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, and for the first time in months I laughed. I laughed like I hadn't since Robert died. The situation was so absurd it was comical. My daughter had robbed me, effectively evicted me from my own life, spoken to me with unbearable condescension, all to fund a European adventure that would likely be a disaster. But what pained me most wasn't the money. It was the ease with which she had discarded me. 45 years of my life dedicated to her, of sacrifice and unconditional love, and she had erased me with a 2-minute phone call. That was the true injury. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they had deposited an amount that probably seemed generous to them, but to me was an insult. They had sold the beach house for far less than its value, likely because they needed quick cash, and they had sold Robert's truck for a pittance. That afternoon, from my window, I watched Angela and Edward load their suitcases into a cab. He was carrying 2 huge suitcases. She had a very expensive-looking carry-on bag. I watched them laugh, kiss, and make plans. They looked like two teenagers excited for an adventure. They never glanced toward my window, never said goodbye. When the cab drove away, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and Robert's documents spread out on the table. I had to make some decisions. I could call a lawyer, reclaim my properties, and take back everything they had stolen. But something told me there was a better way to handle this, a more instructive way. I called Mr. Peterson, the lawyer who had handled Robert's affairs. He had been at the funeral, offered his condolences, and told me to call if I ever needed anything. Well, now I needed him. "Mrs. Brooks, it's good to hear from you. How are you?" "I'm well, Mr. Peterson. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents from Robert that I don't quite understand." "Of course. You can come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be there." That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I dreamed of Robert. He was sitting in his favorite chair reading the newspaper just like every morning. And when he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my love." "It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't the sadness I had felt for so long either. It was something like determination. For the first time since Robert's death, I had a clear purpose. I was going to reclaim what was mine, but not in the way Angela expected. The next morning, I dressed with more care than usual. I put on my wine-colored dress, the one Robert always said made me look elegant. I fixed my hair and applied a little makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw a strong woman. Mr. Peterson's office was downtown in an old but elegant building with marble floors and large windows. He greeted me with a warm smile, but when I showed him the documents, his expression changed completely. "Mrs. Brooks, this is much more than I imagined." Robert was a very smart man. "Look, according to these papers, you are the owner of—" "I know, Mr. Peterson. I've already reviewed them. What I need to know is what I can do legally." Mr. Peterson explained that everything was in order, the documents were legitimate, and I was the rightful owner of all those properties. He also confirmed something I had suspected. The sale of the beach house was illegal because Angela had no right to sell it. "We can get the house back immediately, Mrs. Brooks, and we can also proceed with legal action against your daughter for fraud." "No, Mr. Peterson. I don't want legal action. I want to do this another way. I want everything to remain a secret for now." "Can you help me?" He looked at me with curiosity, but nodded. "Of course, you are my client. What do you need?" "I need you to discreetly get the beach house back. Do what is necessary to nullify that fraudulent sale. And I need you to help me gain real control of all my properties, especially the building where my daughter lives. I understand. It will be a process taking a few weeks, but it's completely feasible, perfect, and Mr. Peterson, no one can know I am behind this, at least for now." When I left his office, I felt as if I had woken from a long dream. I walked through the downtown streets, watching the people, buildings, the life continuing as normal, but for me, everything had changed. I had a plan. The following weeks were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow abandoned by her daughter. But in secret, I was a wealthy woman silently orchestrating the recovery of my assets. Mr. Peterson worked efficiently, calling me every few days with updates on the legal proceedings. I decided to stay in my house for the time being. It was mine, after all, though Angela probably expected me to move into a single room. Every morning I woke up, had breakfast at the same table where Robert and I had shared so many years, and then went for a walk in the neighborhood. The neighbors greeted me with that mix of pity and curiosity reserved for recent widows. Aurora, my lifelong neighbor, approached me one afternoon while I was watering the plants out front. "Antonia, dear, is it true that Angela went to Europe and left you all alone?" "Yes, Aurora, she went with Edward. They have business plans over there." "And how are you going to live, sweetie?" "We all know Robert didn't leave much money. Asterisk if you only knew, asterisk I thought. Don't worry, Aurora, I'll be fine. Do you need anything? I can bring you some food, help with groceries. You're very kind, but I'm fine, really. Aurora looked at me with an expression I knew well, the same one I had received after the funeral. Compassion mixed with a little relief that it wasn't her tragedy. Well, you know where to find me if you need anything. These conversations repeated constantly, with the butcher, the baker, the lady at the corner store. Everyone spoke to me with that soft tone used for the unfortunate, and I would nod, smile, and thank them for their concern. But inside, a part of me enjoyed this performance. It was like living a double life. Mr. Peterson called me one Wednesday morning. Mrs. Brooks, I have good news. I was able to nullify the sale of the beach house. The buyers were unaware the sale was fraudulent, so they received their money back without issue. The house is yours again. Excellent, Mr. Peterson, and the building where Angela lives. That one is more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company, but we need to make administrative changes for you to have direct control. That should take another 2 weeks. Perfect. Keep me informed. After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Angela. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard from her, no call, no message, not even a postcard. To her, I had ceased to exist the moment she got the money she needed. But I knew that was going to change soon. I decided to visit the beach house. I took the bus to the coast, the same route Robert and I had taken hundreds of times. The house was exactly as I remembered it, small, painted cream with a porch overlooking the ocean. The new owners had placed potted plants on the steps. But otherwise, everything was the same. I sat on the curb across the street and looked at it for an hour. I remembered summer afternoons when Angela was little, running on the beach and building sandcastles, Robert grilling fish on the barbecue while I made salads in the kitchen, Angela bringing friends, then boyfriends, then Edward. All those happy moments she had reduced to a simple commercial transaction. An older gentleman came out of the house and saw me sitting there. He approached with curiosity. "Are you okay, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you. I'm just remembering. I knew the former owners. Yes, I knew them very well. What a shame about what happened. They told us the elderly lady was very sick and needed to sell fast. We thought it was a steal, but it turns out the sale wasn't legal. We had to return the house. Did you know them personally? No. We did everything through intermediaries, but they told us the daughter was handling everything because the mother couldn't. What a sad situation. Asterisk, if you only knew how sad it really was. Asterisk, I thought. Well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money. Yes. Luckily, everything worked out, although now we have to look for another house. We liked this one a lot. I left with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt. It was the ease with which Angela had lied about me. She had invented a story about my illness. She had used my supposed vulnerability to justify her actions. To her, I wasn't a person with feelings, but an obstacle to be removed. That night, I called Mr. Peterson again. "Mr. Peterson, I need you to help me with something else. I want to get Robert's truck back, too. That will be more difficult, Mrs. Brooks. The truck was in your name, but your daughter had a power of attorney that allowed her to sell it. How is that possible?" "Apparently, you signed that power of attorney a few months ago after your husband's death. Don't you remember?" There it was the moment Angela had started planning this. I vaguely remembered signing papers she brought me, telling me they were to facilitate funeral and inheritance arrangements. I had been so confused by grief that I signed without reading. How naive I had been. "I understand, Mr. Peterson. Is there any way to get it back?" "We can try, but it will be more complicated. We would need to prove you signed that power of attorney under deception or coercion. Let's do it. I want to get back everything they took from me." Over the next few weeks, I developed a strange routine. In the mornings, I was the poor widow everyone knew. I went out for necessities, talked to the neighbors, and kept up appearances. But in the afternoons, I became a businesswoman. I studied Robert's documents, spoke with Mr. Peterson, and planned my next move. I learned about finance I never thought I'd need to know. I discovered Robert had been even smarter than I imagined. Every one of his investments had been carefully calculated. The building where Angela lived, for example, wasn't just profitable from rent, it was in an area rapidly appreciating in value. I also discovered that Edward, Angela's husband, had substantial debt. He had taken out loans using their apartment as collateral, not knowing he wasn't the real owner. When the banks discovered this, he would be in serious trouble. Mr. Peterson called me one Friday with important news. Mrs. Brooks, we've finished all the paperwork. You now have total control of all your properties. I also recovered Robert's truck. The buyer was an acquaintance of mine, and when I explained the situation, he agreed to return it for a small compensation. Excellent work, Mr. Peterson. Now, I need you to help me with one more thing. I want you to send a letter to my daughter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. There was silence on the other end of the line. Mrs. Brooks, are you sure you want to do this? Completely sure. She decided I wasn't important in her life. Now she's going to find out how important I really am. I understand. Do you want me to send it to Europe? No. I want you to give it to her when she returns. I have a feeling it will be very soon. I wasn't wrong. That same afternoon, Aurora came running to my house with fresh neighborhood news. Antonia, did you know Edward is in trouble with the bank? My brother-in-law who works there told me they're investigating loans he took out using their apartment as collateral. But it turns out the apartment isn't his. Really? Yes, and it seems Angela didn't know anything. They're saying she'll have to come back from Europe to sort out this mess. What a complicated situation. Yes. And the worst part is apparently Edward lied to her about the business in Europe. There was no business. He just wanted to escape his debts here. Perfect. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had expected. Angela had trusted Edward, had sacrificed her relationship with me for him, and now she was discovering he wasn't the man she thought. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked at the stars. Robert used to say the stars were the souls of people who had lived full lives, watching over their families from the sky. If that was true, then he was up there, watching his plan unfold perfectly. Thank you, my love, I said to the sky. Thank you for taking care of me even after your death. The next day, Mr. Peterson called me early. Mrs. Brooks, I have news. Your daughter just arrived in the country. She's at the airport alone. Alone. Yes, apparently Edward stayed in Europe. There are rumors they had a major fight. I see. Did you send the letter? I'm sending it today. She should receive it tomorrow. I hung up and stood in the kitchen, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. After weeks of silent planning, the moment for the first real move had arrived. Angela was about to discover her mother was not the defenseless victim she believed. Angela arrived at her apartment on Tuesday night. I knew this because Aurora, who seemed to have informants throughout the neighborhood, told me the next day, Antonia, your daughter came back last night. I saw her go in with one suitcase, but she looked terrible, pale with dark circles, as if she had been crying the whole flight. Alone, completely alone, and something strange, Antonia. When the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. She had to ask the superintendent to let her in with the emergency copy. Interesting. Edward had the keys, meaning he had probably decided not to return, or perhaps Angela had discovered something about him and fled. In any case, my daughter was back, and very soon she would receive my welcome gift. Mr. Peterson called me that same afternoon. Mrs. Brooks, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed your daughter received it in person. Perfect. How long did we give her? 30 days to vacate the apartment, as per legal standards. But Mrs. Brooks, are you sure you want to do this? She is your daughter, after all. Mr. Peterson, my daughter evicted me from my own life with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my things without asking. She treated me like garbage. Now she's going to learn that actions have consequences. I understand. I just wanted to make sure you had considered all the implications. I have considered them, Mr. Peterson. All of them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake imagining Angela's face when she read the letter. The initial confusion, then disbelief, then panic. She would probably think it was a mistake, that someone was trying to scam her, but when she called to verify, she would discover everything was completely legal. The next day, as if waiting for my call, the phone rang at 8:00 a.m. It was Angela, and her voice sounded desperate. Mom, I need to talk to you urgently. Good morning, honey. How was Europe? Mom, I don't have time for that. I received a very strange letter yesterday. It says I have to vacate my apartment in 30 days. It must be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about this? An eviction notice? How strange. From whom? From a company I've never heard of. It's called, wait, let me find the letter, Robert Investments, Inc. Do you know this company? Robert had used his own name for the company. How poetic. No, honey, I've never heard that name. Are you sure the letter is legitimate? That's what I want to find out. Mom, I need you to help me. I don't know what to do. Edward left me in Europe. He ran off with another woman, and now I come back to this. I don't understand what's happening. There was the confirmation. Edward had abandoned her, probably when the money ran out or when he realized the legal problems at home were more serious than he thought. Poor Angela, she had sacrificed her family for a worthless man. I'm so sorry, honey. Where are you now? I'm in the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Mom, can I come see you? I need to. I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else. The irony was perfect. Now that she was without the man for whom she had abandoned me, she remembered she had a mother. Of course, honey. Come over whenever you want. I'm on my way. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I put on my most conservative gray dress, tied my hair in a simple bun, and practiced my expression of a worried but resigned mother. When Angela arrived, she would see exactly what she expected, a poor, vulnerable widow abandoned by her own daughter. Angela arrived an hour later. When I opened the door, I was surprised at how terrible she looked. She had lost weight, had deep circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes were wrinkled and unkempt. Her eyes were red from crying. Mom, she said, and for a moment I thought she would hug me, but she stopped as if suddenly remembering how things had ended between us. Come in, honey. Do you want some coffee? Yes, please. We sat in the kitchen at the same table where I had read Robert's documents weeks ago. Angela looked small in that chair, lost, just like when she was a child coming to tell me about school problems. Mom, I'm so sorry for the way I left. I know I didn't treat you well. It's in the past, honey. No, it's not. I treated you badly. I said horrible things, and now, her voice broke. Now I have no one. What happened with Edward? He left with a 25-year-old hotel waitress in Paris. It turns out there was never any business in Europe. It was all a lie. He just wanted to escape his debts here and use the money from your house to fund his adventure. All the debts. Yes, Mom, so many debts. It seems he had been taking out loans for years, using our apartment as collateral. But now I find out he wasn't the owner. How is that possible? Here was my opportunity. I don't know, honey. Property matters are complicated. The problem is the banks are coming after me for his debts. They say since we were married, I'm also responsible. And on top of that, this eviction notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I don't have money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to live. She started to cry real tears of genuine desperation. For a moment, my mother's heart softened. I wanted to hug her, console her, tell her everything would be okay. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice when she called from the doctor's office, the ease with which she had discarded me, the way she had spoken to me as if I were a burden. Did you talk to a lawyer about the letter? I don't have money for a lawyer, Mom. We spent everything in Europe. Edward took what little was left when he ran off. So, what are you going to do? I don't know, I thought. Maybe I could stay with you for a while, just until I find a job and can get a small place. There was the question I had been waiting for. After evicting me from my own life, after selling my things, after treating me like garbage, she now wanted me to rescue her. She wanted the poor widow she had created to save her from the consequences of her own actions. Of course, honey, this will always be your home. Angela looked at me with surprise, as if she hadn't expected it to be so easy. Really, Mom? After everything that happened, you are my daughter, Angela. That will never change. She got up, and this time she hugged me. It was a desperate embrace from someone drowning and clinging to the only thing they can find. I hugged her back, but not with unconditional love from before. Now there was calculation in my embrace, strategy. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job soon. I won't be a burden. Don't worry about that now. Rest, recover, and then we'll see what your options are. Angela left that afternoon to get her things from the apartment. I stayed in the kitchen, thinking how easy it had been. She had come to me exactly as planned, broken, desperate, with no options. Best of all, she suspected nothing. To her, I was still the poor, abandoned mother who needed her compassion. But this was only the first part of my plan. Having her live with me would give me the perfect opportunity for the next phase. I was going to let her settle in, feel safe, and believe she had found refuge. And then, when she least expected it, I would teach her the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson, I need you to do something else for me. Tell me, Mrs. Brooks. I want you to investigate Edward's debts. I want to know exactly how much he owes to whom and what legal options I have to separate them from my daughter. That will take time, but it's feasible. Perfect. And Mr. Peterson, I want this kept absolutely secret. No one can know I am behind this investigation. Of course, Mrs. Brooks, may I ask what your final plan is? My plan, Mr. Peterson, is simple. I'm going to save my daughter, but first she has to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom. When I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the wine Robert had been saving for special occasions. It had been a long time since I'd had a special occasion like this. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, I held all the good cards. Angela moved into my house the next day. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, all that remained of her previous life. I watched her unpack in her old room, the same one she had slept in during her teenage years, and I could see the humiliation in her movements. She had gone from a luxury condo to taking refuge in her childhood bedroom. Mom, I found this in the apartment, she said, showing me a manila envelope. It was among Edward's things. It has your name on it. It was another of Robert's envelopes. My heart sped up, but I kept my composure. My name. How strange. Yes, look. She showed me the envelope. Indeed, it had my name written in Robert's handwriting, but this one was different from the one in my dresser. Smaller, newer. Maybe Edward found it among Dad's things when he died and forgot to give it to me. Angela said, "It's possible. Can I see it?" I opened the envelope in her presence. Inside was a short letter and a small key. The letter said, "Antonia, if you are reading this after receiving the main envelope, it means our daughter is going through a difficult time. This key opens a safety deposit box at the Central Bank downtown branch. The number is 247. There is something there that can help you help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Robert." Angela read the letter over my shoulder. A safety deposit box? Dad had a safety deposit box. I had no idea. I didn't either. I lied. Your father never told me about this. Do you think we should go see what's in there? I don't know, honey. Maybe it's better to leave things as they are. But, Mom, maybe there's something important in there. Documents or... I don't know. Maybe something valuable that can help us. The desperation in her voice was palpable. Angela was clinging to any possibility of finding a way out, and I was going to let her cling. Little longer before showing her the full reality. Okay, I said after a calculated pause, we can go tomorrow. That night, Angela and I had dinner together for the first time in months. She had cooked trying to be useful, but the food tasted of guilt and desperation. She told me more about what happened in Europe, each story worse than the last. Edward lied about everything, Mom. Not just the business, but the debts too. I thought he only owed a little, but it turns out he owes over $100. The worst part is he used my name for some loans without me knowing. How is that possible? He forged my signature. When I married him, I gave him documents for our joint account. I never thought he'd use them for this. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know? I don't know, it's all so complicated. The banks say that since we were married, I'm responsible for all his debts anyway. And the divorce. I don't even know where Edward is. He just disappeared. His phone is disconnected. He doesn't answer emails. Nothing. It's as if he vanished. Perfect. Edward had run away like the rat he was, leaving Angela to face the consequences alone. In a way, he had done me a favor. Now my daughter was experiencing what I had felt when she abandoned me, betrayal by someone she had completely trusted. I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't know things were so bad. I didn't either, Mom. I thought Edward loved me, that we were going to build something together, but it turns out I was just an easy way for him to get money and documents. Angela started to cry again. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not realize who he really was? It was tempting to tell her I had seen the signs, that I had tried to warn her Edward was untrustworthy, but that would have broken my facade as a compassionate, vulnerable mother. Love can be blinding sometimes, honey. Don't blame yourself. But, Mom, I didn't just ruin my life. I ruined yours, too. I treated you horribly. I took your house, your truck, your things, all to give to a man who abandoned me. Now we're two poor women trying to survive because of me. It's in the past, Angela. We'll be okay. No, it's not. Now we're both in trouble because of my mistakes. You lost everything Dad left you, and I lost my marriage and my future. We're two poor women trying to survive. Asterisk if she only knew. Asterisk I thought. At this moment I had more money than she could imagine. I owned the building where she lived. I could solve all her problems with one phone call, but it wasn't time yet. The next day we went to the bank. Angela was nervous, hopeful. I maintained my act as a confused widow who didn't understand finance. The bank employee led us to the safety deposit boxes, verified my ID, and opened box number 247. Inside were jewels, many jewels, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. I recognized some as heirlooms from Robert's family, others were new to me. There was also a letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate value. Angela gasped, Mom, this must be worth a fortune. You think so? Yes. Look at this emerald, this pearl necklace. Mom, Dad saved a treasure here. According to Robert's letter, the jewels were worth approximately $200,000, a significant amount, but nothing compared to the rest of my assets. It was like finding coins under the sofa when you have $1 million in the bank. What do we do with this, Mom? I don't know, honey. They're family memories, but, Mom, we could sell some pieces. With this money, you could get your beach house back, and I could pay off some of Edward's debts. There it was again. Even when finding something valuable, Angela's first reaction was to use it to solve the problems Edward created. She hadn't learned anything yet. Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance to pay Edward's debts? What other option do I have, Mom? If I don't pay something soon, the banks will foreclose on everything I have. And technically, I don't own anything. Everything was in Edward's name. Think carefully, honey. Once you sell these jewels, you can't get them back. I know, but what else can I do? I can't get a job with all these legal claims. No employer will hire someone with so many problems. We took the jewels home. Angela spread them on the kitchen table, examining each one, calculating which to sell and which to keep. It was Painful watching her reduce decades of family history to numbers on a spreadsheet. Mom, I think I can get $180,000 for the jewels, she said one afternoon, counting imagined bills on the table. It's less than I expected, but enough to pay the most urgent debts. Are you sure you want to do this? I have no choice. If I don't pay soon, they'll seize everything. Even this house could be at risk if they prove I have a legal connection to the properties. The irony was profound. Angela was worried about losing a house I owned, paying the debts of a man who abandoned her with money from jewels that belonged to the man who created the fortune that could save her. And how will you decide